And we're back with part two. Welcome back to Los Amigos. I am Wilmer Valderrama.
I'm Freddy Rodriguez.
And Freddy, we've been talking about leadership, putting teams together.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Numero dos.
Transparency, I think it's number one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's no secrets here. If we're in the telling story business, like we need to be very much on the same page at all times. If you disagree with something, it's so important that you do it with kindness, that you do it with the serenity of welcoming new ideas, and that if you're going to oppose a question, that you should always come with an answer, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that, like, one thing is be a complainer and saying like, hey, it's not good enough, or it's not this, or it's not getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is not following those comments with a roadmap to get it to a better place. If you really do have an opinion that something is not working, then what is your thoughts on making it work? Right?
Yeah.
So like that's where I feel like number one, when it comes to leadership, it's important to be transparent with your teams.
Yeah.
But it's also even more important to listen to the team's thoughts and struggles with such creative endeavors, right? Like, you don't have to have all the answers, right? And somebody said it's like the best leaders are the ones who don't micromanage.
Yeah.
Right? The best visionaries are the ones who, think of a dream, right? They visualize it, and then they divorce that dream and allow the team to own that. And then have that team bring that dream to life and soar in other ways that you didn't even expect for that same idea to do.
Is that why you feel that your company has grown as much as it has, and has seen the success that it's seen? Do you feel that that type of leadership skill has contributed to that aspect?
I think I trust, and so therefore they trust me, right? I trust my team to do what they're there to do,
right?
And when there's things that could have been a lot more efficient or could have been a lot more, thoughtful or things like that, they're very soft, quick discussions. We don't have to, nobody has to feel like, like they got it wrong. Everybody could feel like, great, we tried that. Let's try this other way, right? So transparency, I think, is important.
Because they're human.
They're human. And by the way, we're in the people
make
business.
Mistakes, and people are going to, right.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me is to trust the people you have in your team to do what they're there to do, because otherwise you just do everyone's job, right? Like the leader is not there to do everyone's job. The leader is there to facilitate, to delegate with kindness, and to create an environment where they feel safe voicing the good and the bad ideas.
Although it may not be intentional, do you find, and I ask this because I've known you so long, right? And do you find that, not that you try to do everybody else's job, but you're so, I've seen you be so incredibly focused and on your hustle. Do you find that you have to sometimes go, oh God, I gotta step back. I gotta not do that. I gotta not make that call. I gotta not pick those cables. Dude, I've seen you wear like 5 different hats at one time, and I'm like, geez, man, this guy is gonna.
Well, look, I think we all have to be able to wear those hats to eventually not.
No, look at that smile, man. Look at that smile. Yeah, you know I'm speaking the truth here.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree. I think that when you are a creative person and you have the ability to see beyond the idea.
Yeah.
When I come up with an idea myself, right? I'm already at like, how is it sitting on the shelves?
Yeah.
There's like probably 35 steps before the shelf.
Same.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm already thinking about what the poster looks like before there's even a script. Right? And that's both a gift and really a curse.
Right.
Because there's a lot of steps in between to get it there. But for all those things to get you to that shelf or that poster idea, there is a team who does that better than you.
Yeah.
You know, and so therefore, but you do have to have eyes on the process, especially when it's something as specific as like a major IP or something. There's certain things you can't just stray away from,
Right.
and you know you're there to steer the ship.
Yeah.
You know, but a team is getting it somewhere,
Right,
right?
because what you're thinking of is the end goal, right?
Yeah,
You're at point A and you already see
right,
Z, and
right.
your job as a company owner, as a CEO, is to guide that process from A to Z,
Correct,
right?
correct. Yeah, and by the way, that's the other thing. You do this long enough with individuals. I mean, someone like Leo. Leo, how long you've been working? We've been working together.
Coming on 14.
So Leo and I have
Wow,
been
has it
working
been
together for
14 years, Leo?
14 years.
No way!
For
Wow.
14 years, he's understood, um, you know, the essence, the DNA, and the
Mm-hmm.
mission statement of the
Ah,
company, and he's
ah,
owned it himself.
yeah,
And now it's his vision. Now the podcast division, which he is the head of,
yeah,
and how he manages his relationship with our partners, our iHeart Media,
yeah,
you know, comes from his vision of where he feels this company should go next
yeah,
as a podcast division. And what I can do is I can support him. I can, I can support his ideas. I can give him real feedback,
yeah.
right? But at some point, I have to now trust his
Mm-hmm.
ideas of how this thing should run. So most oftentimes than not, because we have such a short hand at this point,
Yeah,
he'll come and tell. I will ask him, "What do you think we should do about that?" And he's like, "I think we could go here, here, and here." And I go, "Okay, go."
yeah.
I don't have to have an opinion about that because I know that he's probably vetted every possible scenario
Mm-hmm.
before we make that decision.
Are
You
you
know,
are you at a point that although let's just say it's something that Leo brings to you, right? And although you're at point A and you kind of see Z, but Leo has a different opinion as to how to get to Z, are you at a point where you override your own instinct and allow him to reach
it's
Z or
yes and no.
uh
Yes and no, because if we both see it a little differently,
uh
before I even disagree,
mm,
I would create space for him to tell me what's the outcome, how does it end,
yeah,
and what is it about. Because there may be things in the initial conversation that I didn't pick up on that I needed in order to say, oh, yeah, it's good.
right.
Right. So that's like one aspect of it.
Yeah.
But if it is, in fact, a differential of directions, it doesn't come in the form of critique or disagreement. It
Mm,
comes in the form of questions.
right.
Right. So you ask the question,
Right.
what do you think the audience is for this? Right.
Mm,
Or, what would an episode be like? What's the structure of an episode?
mm-hmm.
Right. And the other one is like, what's the theme of the season? If you have to create a theme for the season, what's that theme?
Yeah.
What are the guests like? Right. When you ask all these questions about a show and somebody has an answer for those,
Yeah.
you have to trust them.
Yeah.
You know,
And wouldn't you say there's also an aspect of humility
totally.
on both sides, right? Because you have to have the humility enough to go. Although, and I'm speaking for you now, Leo. I would imagine on Leo's end to have the humility enough that if you're asking him a million questions, for him not to let his ego or an
No
ego
ego. Yes.
go. Why is he asking me
Bro,
a
I'm going to tell
million
you something.
questions,
I've
right?
been so incredibly blessed.
Mhm.
Everyone that has worked
Amen.
and works at WV,
Mhm.
and has owned their own perspective departments, because the company now has multiple departments and they're running on their own, right? Like
Yeah.
the podcast division, right? The podcast division, the alternative division, right? The scripted division, right? The film division, right? Then you have, the product development side, but then you also have, the management company and then the nonprofit stuff, right?
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that, like, in order for all of that to run, there has to be a level of trust,
Mhm.
that comes with time,
Yeah.
and I would say this, like, the number one skill that anyone, no matter what career or what job they're going for,
Mhm.
to have is foresight.
Mhm.
You have to see it before it happens.
Right.
You have to have an answer before the question happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing everyone in this company does beautifully, right? You know, they know what questions I'm gonna ask at some point already, you know, so they checkmate me in ways that like I don't even see coming anymore.
So there's
right?
that's interesting because they've worked with you for so long. They
Yeah.
have a sense of what you might come
But
back.
it's in
at
the
them with,
culture, right? It's in the
Yeah,
culture, and in that trust also kind of evolves into, you know, into a mutual respect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like so, it's foresight and respect.
Yeah.
You gotta, you know, you gotta put on your silk gloves when you are handling storytelling, because not one size fits all, and that's okay, right? As long as you're telling the same story together, how you get to the last page that says the end, you know, that is the adventurous exercise that you go with your creative partners, right? Like, you know, but the truth is like, yes, and right. And then over time you learn that what you respect about these individuals goes beyond their creativity, their organizational skills, their sense of foresight. You know, it you start realizing that it takes a very balanced and beautiful individual to you know, to do a job like this, love it in the highs and the lows, and you end up not only respecting but you become really good friends. You know, but I think in that process you learn to appreciate the friendship, and you know, you spend so much time together that eventually you go, oh well, you know, this is, you know, we're gonna experience life together too.
Yeah.
You know, and that life happens. And you know, I've leaned on Leo and Jessica and, you know, Tadao, and I mean everybody, you know, everybody in my life too that's just worked around me for a very long time. But you know, but that could be tricky, right?
Yeah, and that brings up a great point, Wilmer, which I want to ask you about. When you work so closely with people and you develop a relationship over a decade, right?
Right.
You become friends. And I wanted to see and wanted to ask you all on the flip side of that, would you ever hire your friends from back home or friends that you grew up with to be a part of your team? Because you have the first part of that relationship, right? Of the closeness and familiarity, but maybe not the professional side of that.
Yeah.
So would you, because you look at examples like LeBron, you know, LeBron James hired, you know, his friends from back home, Rich Paul and Maverick Carter, and they're doing big things right now.
Right.
And so I had that question for you both. Would you ever be open to working with and building a team that consists of close friends from the get-go?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think I would imagine. Look, I don't know what was behind LeBron's decision making, but I would imagine that he must have seen something in them that said, oh, well, these are not just like my buddies who I hang out with and mess around with, right? There must have been, they must have had the aptitude, the skill level to achieve the heights that they achieved, right?
Yeah.
They were probably not in corporate America's eyes like the first choice, maybe, but he saw something in them that they could get there, and it took someone like LeBron to give them that chance to do it, right?
That's really smart.
So to answer that question, would I? I mean, yeah, if I saw those qualities in someone, whether they're my friend, whether they're my kids, whether they're whoever it is, but I need to see specific qualities in them, specific goals and motivation and other aspects in them for me to go, I'm going to take this chance on you, because there's always that possibility that they don't meet your expectations, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't meet your expectations, then what? Then it affects your relationship with them. It affects your friendship, or even if you're hiring family, right? Like, how does that affect?
It's tricky.
It's really tricky.
It's very tricky, and I think that's the right answer. I think that's the best answer. I think what my biggest concern is, if you're trying to achieve something, you have to give yourself the best shot at it, you know? And, you know, there's this fantasy of like, I'm bringing the crew with me, you know? And I tried it. The first 10, 15 years of my career. I tried.
But dude, you were like a freaking teenager when
exactly why
you were
I tried
it.
exactly why I tried.
You were on the biggest show on the planet, and and it was popular, and I mean, I could imagine you must have been like,
Dude, I hired some of my
let's
friends
go.
as my assistants, and
What's the craziest thing that ever happened when one of your friends was
oh
your
my
assistant?
God,
And you don't
well,
have to name the person, by the
no,
way.
no, all of them I think are stable and doing their own thing now. But I will
Yeah.
say, say, form like, these assistants giving you, Christmas and birthday presents,
Uh
and use your own credit card to buy it.
huh. Wait. Your
Yeah.
assistant gave you a
They get
birthday
yes,
Christmas present, but
yes.
used your credit
Credit card to pay
card
for
to
it.
buy.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So I bought my
Yeah.
own Christmas presents from my assistant.
Right. Right.
So like I got this really nice dress shirts with my initials on it, and I was like, this is really thoughtful. I love that.
Yeah.
WEV. That's awesome. And these are really cool shirts, and at the time I was wearing suits all the time. I was like, yeah, this is
Yeah.
really thoughtful. I like that. And then the statements came, and all of a sudden I was like, where are these shirts from? Like, I didn't buy this dress shirt.
Was there ever a moment in between that where you were like, I know what your salary is.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
are
these
you
shirts are very
affording?
expensive. Yes.
How are you affording
yeah.
this shirt on an assistant salary?
Yeah, no, I mean, like other
Yeah.
instances, like, I'd be away shooting a movie or something, and I had my Austin Martin my brand new DB9 Austin Martin in the garage, and I came home
Yeah.
like maybe 2 months later or something, and then I looked in the garage and there was a dent
No.
in the front of the garage. And there was only one car that would fit that description, and it was the Aston Martin that was parked across from that dent.
No, man.
And I found out they never told me that they moved the Aston Martin or they was taken out or whatever the hell
So they
happened.
drove your car while you
Into
were
the
away.
fucking-
No, but that
yes.
they were driving your car.
I mean, look,
like,
I'm gonna not rehash that memory and try to be Sherlock Holmes over here and try to find out if they actually went on joyrides. I'm gonna assume not.
Yeah.
Maybe they were moving the car and by accident they hit it against the thing, but it was like a major dent in the garage from.
And didn't say anything.
And then nobody said anything about it. They're like, oh, nothing happened to the car, so I think we're good,
Right.
So it's like stuff like that. You're like, come on, man. Like that.
But then you have people like Tadao, who I see is still in your and
still in my life forever.
And as far as I've known you, Tadao has always been there.
Yes. Tadao, just to describe Tadao for everybody who's listening or watching. Tadao is a beautiful Samoan of culture man who has been my brother.
Yeah.
He has stood by my side. It was my protector. He was my security for 20 plus years. He has his own he has his own security company now, where he deploys he's
not
beautiful
doing that now.
Samoans into all these jobs. So
Yeah.
he's doing really, really good, and I'm incredibly proud of him. He's got a beautiful family with Nicole and baby. But Tadao was one of those guys who tolerated zero shenanigans around my life. If you were out here for reasons that were not like-minded, you were not allowed to be around. And he really protected me in so many ways. So in that aspect, we were on the road all the time.
Right.
You talk about ego. Zero ego.
Yeah.
If something had to be done, he would just be the first one to show up. I never had to ask him for a favor because he was already seeing it before it happened, and
So not taking advantage of your kindness.
no, he
always
was,
a sense of respect.
He was
and
the one who
place.
showed up for absolutely everything,
Yeah.
all of it.
But
It
you know what I'm
could-
saying? Like, because it could, sometimes you hire people and they get really comfortable because they know you're cool, and then the respect.
Oh, you don't know.
starts to
I don't know how to
dissipate,
ask for help. I'll just be very open here. I don't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. And therefore having real foresight is something I reward in our company because I sometimes will just do it myself. Right. Like it's a tough thing. I mean, it's just always I rather show up for people. I never ask anyone to show up for me. And I've had to learn over the years to kind of really lean on the people that I know soulfully really want to be there, and that it brings them joy to show up for me.
Yeah.
Like silly things like, like a birthday party for Nakano. Like these are, my friends are the heads of the departments at WB Entertainment, and they're showing up and blowing up balloons and like, talking to the princess to go through the back to surprise her or bring in the cake. And it's like, so
Where,
that's like a real friendship, you know what I
where
mean?
they
And
could have been like, that's not my job.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I don't do that,
Right. Right.
But as soon as there's gonna be, and it's because I also don't, I don't go around to celebrate myself often, or that it just doesn't happen. But as soon as they force me to do it, then I love it. You know what I mean? Then I'm like, I'm all about it, right? But they just they really support me, and so it's a pleasure to show up for them. What about you? Do you have a pressure? Like, do you know how to ask for help? Do you know how to make that phone call?
Man, that's a really good question. I think that because of how we grew up, it's tough asking
Do it
for
yourself.
help. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm a very much do it myself, wear all five hats type of person.
Totally.
And sometimes that's tough because I have a wonderful team behind me that I should be delegating
Yeah.
more of that to. That I often find myself fighting the urge to do it. Not to say that I want to do anybody's job by,
Right.
by no means, but it's just it's like what you said at the beginning of this conversation, right? Like you're at point A, you already see Z, and I want to put it in fifth gear to go to Z. And people have their own pace, people have their own strategies as to how they reach Z.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to just sort of sit back and allow people their process to help me reach Z, But I have a wonderful team behind me. As a matter of fact, I think you and I share. Wilmer and I have both been at this agency called UTA, United Talent Agency, for God knows how long.
Yeah.
Long time. And
We've been lifers.
We're lifers, man. I go there and I'm like office furniture here. I've been here so
And we also share some of the same agents too.
That's right. Shout out to Nancy
Nancy
Gates.
Gates. She's another one of my guardian angels.
Love you,
She's
Nancy.
protected me and guided me and advised me, and she's been my big sister for a long time. She's someone I
I've got a
also
lot of
watch
love
to.
for her, a lot of respect.
Yeah.
For Nancy. She kicks butt.
But so it's hard to ask for help, right? And therefore, when you put together a team, you have to have individuals whose humility is part of the virtual how they run their life. Having a sense of foresight and creating a path that assists the common goal, right? Like that feels like that feels like a lot of the virtues,
You ever had to let somebody go as part of your team because they didn't possess the same qualities that you see in yourself as a CEO, or that you felt? Here's, and let me preface it before you ask it. Sometimes I feel like if someone's repping you, right? They're out on the town and they're a representation of you, right? And if they're what's the correct terminology here? I don't want to say value system because I don't want to sound like a freaking,
Sure.
but like,
I mean, I would say
if they don't emulate what you represent
Right.
as a person, do you ever find that to be a problem? Do you ever?
Well, look, here's the thing. When you have had a company for this long, we're going on almost 2 decades of a company, right?
Yeah.
Individuals are going to grow, right? And some are going to find different paths, and some are going to find different passions, and that really always happens. It's some people also say, I want to try something different,
Yeah.
So for those moments, you're kind of like, absolutely, and you'll always kind of know, when someone's either in it or not, and for those moments, you have to just create the space for that you know, to be voiced and then there's also other times where you have to kind of find a way to say, okay, like these are tough calls, but it's a business, right?
Yeah.
And everyone has to, kind of show up and do their best, and it's a very tough cut through environment, and funding for companies also are very hard to find too, so there's other factors that come into that. But the truth is, when I look at the individuals and the amazing people that have come through our company, through all the last 20 years, whether they're executives or assistants, they always go off to do amazing stuff, and there's always a way for them to full circle come around. We've had multiple executives or assistants that come full circle, and they're now a producer, they're now a director, they're now whatever, and they're like, hey, I have an idea. We're like, bring it in. So we've always had an open door policy to for those to return and continue to cultivate the relationship. But we've been pretty fortunate that as you can see, rarely nobody leaves.
Nobody leaves.
So
it's like I always tell people, like, assistants at agencies or management companies or wherever, that like they're not there to be like an assistant their whole life, man.
Right.
They're there to like eventually become an executive themselves, and so treat them right. Treat them right.
Yeah.
No, this has been a really interesting conversation. And I think that it applies to everyone, right? It doesn't matter if you're in our industry or whatever industry you're in. Your support system is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Whether it's the people who work with you, whether it's your parents, your siblings, your friends, your support system sometimes dictates the direction in your career and in your life.
Right.
And sometimes people persevere past them not having that, but the majority of the time, it's always good to have a good inner circle. I mean, when you say,
I do, and to double down on that, I think is even more critical to remember, like what we always say here on the show. It's supposed to be fun. You want to create an environment where people feel respected and loved, and you only talk to people with the same respect they give you. I always think it's important that, to preserve the harmony, you have to remember what you love and respect about that person before you even use words. That goes a long way, right? Because that kind of respect turns into an effortless confidence that makes everyone better around. A safety that makes them, thrive and soar with, with the tools they need to continue to grow, right? So absolutely, I would say that. And I would also say that, if you're going to hire your friends and you all want to come up together, I don't know. There was some director that said something about networking was not, like the worst advice he was giving was network.
Oh, yeah, the guy from Moonlighting.
Yeah.
God, what's his name? Barry Jenkins?
Yeah. I
I
had thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I had thoughts about that. I had thoughts about that because in order for you to, find greatness, you have to be exposed to enough individuals that had done it before. You have to understand this is a very complicated industry, and that one size doesn't fit all for this kind of stuff. So I would say that networking with the like-minded is what makes you better. Surrounding yourself with individuals that that are in search of the same thing, also makes you better, and makes that shot even more realistic. So to me, I mean, like, look at this. You and I probably met at one of these network convenings, right? We were at an award show. We were on something. We're like, hey, man, you're doing it. Yeah, I'm doing it too. Cool. High five. We should be doing this together. That's kind of how it happens in our industry, But I would also say that, that the biggest factor here is lead with kindness.
Yeah.
Create a space for people to grow.
Yeah.
Because it benefits the big picture, right? That's kind of what you want. You want. But what about you, Aaron? What do you think?
When it comes to building a team and networking, I think like I read this book years ago called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I can tell them real quick. And it's by this author, Patrick Lencioni. And he talked about when building a team, we often neglect these aspects. And there are like 5 glaring aspects of a dysfunctional team. And so 1 is the absence of trust. 2 is the fear of conflict. 3 is a lack of commitment. 4 is the avoidance of accountability. And then 5 is the inattention to results.
Wow.
And so when I was a part of the Daily Show a few years back, we got this book to read and powered through it, and I asked myself, like, what was the one that I was afraid of the most of those dysfunctions? And it really was the fear of conflict, you know? And so we were talking about being direct, and, you know, I'm a, you know, empath, radical empath. I want everybody to be happy. I want to, my dad calls me Mr. Kumbaya.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest thing. I want everyone to be cool. And sometimes it is in conflict that we find the results. And sometimes conflict is a misnomer. People think, oh, you know, forget you and forget you then. It doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
There can just be these moments of true directness. And then, Wilmer, I love what you said, just moving forward. We don't have to sit in it. We can just move forward now.
And learn from it.
We can learn from it. And then because we're all results driven, right? And so if we're really about the end result, we can get over ourselves, get over our egos, and then move forward and find the best solution for the project at hand.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that that's my biggest thing, just holding on to those 5 dysfunctions. And whenever I'm entering a situation or collaborating with others, like I myself direct and produce and write as well, I'm always looking out for that, not only within the group, but within myself.
Right.
And so whenever I'm encountering a challenge, like, okay, what am I exercising right here? Is it a fear of, you know, conflict? Is it a lack of commitment? Is it inattentiveness to the result? And usually from within those 5 dysfunctions, I have an opportunity to nip the problem in the bud and get back to what we're all here to do, which is to make it happen.
Yeah.
Was that you said that they gave you that book? Was that part of their leadership style at that show to give that book to all of their employees so that there's a cohesiveness in terms of how you all are thinking at the show?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. While at that job, it was also a collaboration with Paramount Audio. And so their audio division assigned that reading task to us because they were, you know, trying to get better. You know, they had a very like corporate side of seeing things, but they were trying to also think outside the box.
Yeah.
And so in the Daily Show, it's kind of like run and gun. You know, we're doing this, we're doing that. And so it was a good opportunity to reflect and evaluate. And it was all in the hopes of, just fine tuning some issues and some challenges that we observed. And it stuck with me the entire time. So when we were talking about team today, I was like, oh, this is a great book that I read that kind of helped me get out of my own sort of, I don't know if it was malaise or just like the worst part you can be in our lives or in this industry or this job is thinking that you have it all figured out.
Right.
You constantly want to evolve and get better and fine tune things. And so that really helped me get on a page where I was like, okay, I'm always going to be looking at these things. So whenever we have a problem flare up, I can be like, oh, we're not thinking about the end result in mind here. Oh, so-and-so doesn't want to be direct with so-and-so because they're scared about how they may come off. Okay, let's figure
fear,
that
right?
out.
Fear is such a poison.
Absolutely.
Fear of moving forward, fear of voicing your thoughts. I mean, it's, but also like when you fear your job or losing your job,
Or or your boss or your fear. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, not even like fearing an individual. I'm talking about fearing the energy of your job, feeling like there's an expiration date to your job somehow creates this mirage of pressure that somehow it's gonna go away, it's gonna go away, it's gonna go away, and therefore you're only focusing about preservation as opposed to progression.
Yeah.
And then therefore, guess what happens? You know, somebody's gonna take a note that all you're doing is trying not to lose your job.
Yeah.
And when that comes across and you lose the creativity or the innovation of driving with vision, guess what happens? Like
Or chance
you're no
taking
longer a team member.
Yeah.
Right? You're no longer a leader because you're just only trying to preserve your job at the detriment of the team's efforts, right? So so a lot of that stuff plays a major factor. But yeah, I mean that's thank you for sharing all those things.
Yeah,
We a
thanks,
lot of
sir.
stuff to reflect on that, and you know, I hope everyone, you know, walks away with some little, you know, notions,
Little
a
nugget.
little, a couple little diamonds of thoughts here. Putting a team is not simple,
Yeah.
but I guess the most primitive essence, find individuals that are doing it like you're doing it, or they share the same values of how to get there. And if they don't, learn from those who may have other ways. I think that's the idea in leadership, I think. But Freddie, thank you so much for those thoughts. Really cool, bro.
Thank you, Wilmer. Same to you, man.
Yes.
Same to you.
This is Dos Amigos, and tell a friend.
Tell a friend.